All right, my friends, we're back again. Dynamic Man Podcast, episode 52, Gorgeous Women and Greed versus Attraction. So I'm going to just make a little comment right here on X, get people paying attention to our current stream. This is going to be a good show, guys. It's going to be a good show. So look, this is the topic. It's going to be a little bit shorter because I'm about 18 minutes today, okay? This is a topic that came up acutely on a phone call with a client the other night, and I wanted to go into it a little bit more because I said something to him that I never said before. I've tackled the topic I'm going to go into before, but I never tackled it in the same way I did on the conversation with him, and it immediately registered with him. It hit him in a certain way that I don't think it's been hit with people before. So I want to talk about this. So I've said for a long time that looks are a threshold issue. Okay. And of course, that doesn't, some people never want to hear that. People on the internet don't want to hear that. People on the internet want to talk about how you got to be getting nines and tens. If you're not getting nines and tens, if you're not going to commit to a 9 or a 10, then you're just a bitch. You're just a bitch. You just can't get good women. You just can't. You're just not good with women, right? All this sort of nonsense. I have pushed back against that, not because I'm encouraging guys to settle, but I'm going to explain this a little bit more on today's show. I've always said that looks are a threshold issue. And when I say threshold issue, what I mean is that a woman has to be attractive enough for you to want to claim her as your own. Just be attractive enough for you to want to sleep with her, for you to desire her on a regular basis, right? Now, if we use the 10-point scale, okay, I know it's not perfect. It's also subjective because one man's 9 can be another guy's 6. It can go that far depending. I have seen it. I have seen it happen. I don't think it usually gets worse than that. I don't think it usually gets worse than that. But I think that you can have up to even a 3 points swing in people's subjective belief in a woman. Okay. But, because some guys, the most clear thing is certain faces, right? But the biggest one is, of course, the curvy versus thin argument. There's some guys who really like curvy girls, really don't care. She's got a really big butt, really big tits, and she's got curves. They don't care how big that frame gets. Other guys, not about that. Other guys would even sacrifice some of the curve to get more of the thin, right? So this is what I mean that there's variation on here. But I'm just going to tell you my sort of scale, right? To me, I know some guys they use 8 as the cutoff point, but to me, I think 7 is the threshold. I think 7's the threshold for all of these things. When I say all of these things, I mean not just I don't just mean looks because there's every different area has thresholds. There's threshold in overlap in values. There's threshold in personality compatibility, sexual compatibility, right? Um, if you're beneath 7 out of 10 in any of those categories, it's just not going to work. Or you're going to feel very, very dissatisfied. You're going to feel very, very much like you settled. But if you hit the threshold in each of those core categories, then you're able to actually move forward satisfied. And maybe in one category you get a 9 or a 10, and the other one you get a 7 or an 8. This is true in any system, right? But I'll give you an example. Your car does not need every single thing within it to be absolutely perfect. As a machine, you need to have everything in the right place, right? But Maybe something's a little loose. Maybe I'm not saying this is good, by the way. I'm not a mechanic. I'm just trying to make an analogy here. But there's a certain point where a system collapses, right? There's a certain point where part of the car, something that was a little loose or a little unlubricated, not ideally lubricated, right? A gear, but was still functioning. There's a certain point where it no longer functions. That's the threshold. So every single system, any kind of thing has a threshold. Energy, when you have state changes in chemistry, it takes a certain amount of energy to change the state. So if you affect one of the variables, things can fall apart, right? Okay. So point here is that thresholds are always what you're looking to have met. You always want the threshold to be met. But because of the internet, because of manosphere and, plastic surgery and influencer culture, looks maxing like we had on the show the other week, right? Everything is about looks more so than ever. So if you listen to people, especially when their paradigm is, I just want to, hook up. They don't say that, but that's actually what their life is. A lot of times they don't say that. Yeah, well, I get a woman if there are just wife material women out there. Okay. All right. Yeah. Got it. Your behavior is certainly not husband material, but let's put that aside for a second here. The point is that the focus is on like, well, I could get a hotter girl. And when I deal with guys who are having a hard time choosing women, you better believe that the number one issue by far when it comes to other things, I've had clients who cared about other things, who had issues committing or at least marrying. But 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 guys, the issue is going to be, well, there's hotter women out there. There's hotter women out there. Let me actually ask you something that I think is not typically thought of. Are you even attracted to some of those women? Because let me make a point here. There's like, when you have women who are dressed, they have makeup on, like, I'm not disputing that they're hot, but they are dressed to be hot. You know what I mean? The way that they dress, they're dressed in a manner to tell people you're looking at a hot girl. Sometimes if you look more closely at them, you realize that maybe they're not actually quite as hot. I'm not saying they aren't attractive still, but that, they're creating an impression. It's like power, right? These women are beautiful, but also the way they do their makeup, the way they dress, the way they carry themselves, they're moving around and acting like they're hot because they know that hotness is power. They get to intimidate, they get to control, they get attention and validation from it, money in a lot of cases, right? And so the question becomes, as a man, are you actually into that woman? Or do you just feel like you're supposed to be into her? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you don't find her attractive. But what I mean is she actually more sexually desirable to you than some other girl next door who's fit and pretty, that has other things that are more appealing in terms of her personality? Which one of those women is actually more sexually desirable to you, more attractive to you? See, what I think happens with a lot of guys who get hung up is they look at these like really hot girls, especially the girls online, right? But maybe they see them in their real life too, depending on, you're in Miami or New York, right? They see these hot girls and it's greed. It's the equivalent. It's not, I could find a woman I'm more attracted to. It's, I want a hotter woman. Well, why do you want a hotter woman? Because the hotness of the woman is power. You get this hotter woman, you get an ego boost. Other people see that you're this type of guy. But is she actually more desirable to you than this other woman? The reason that guys will, they'll chase after those women, and sometimes they'll get them. They get good enough in their life, they'll get those women. But you notice that they're not usually very satisfied with them. Or then they start to play a game of trying to compromise on other things in the relationship in order to keep her appeased. Now, this kind of gets into some of the stuff the red pill has talked about, where there's a subset of the red pill that's just said, don't even bother with 9s or 10s. They're not worth the hassle because they're never satisfied with anything. Some truth to this. There's exceptions. Some truth to this, though, right? But I'm mostly interested in this from the perspective of the guy. Why is it that you want that extra half point, so to speak? Why is that important to you when when you've met a woman who turns you on, you'd like to see her naked, you'd like the feel of her body, you'd like to look at her? What's the reason? It's ego. It's greed. It's really not dissimilar to money. It's not dissimilar from saying, I have this investment that's going to appreciate, guaranteed, stable appreciation. Fundamentals are strong. And I said this to my client, right? And buying a JPEG, 2021, JPEG phenomenon, buying a JPEG for 1 million, because obviously it's going to go up. There's kind of like a moonshot thing. I got to get all the money now. How do I get rich as fast as possible? Let me throw it all into a shit coin. Maybe you're not liking my analogy here, but I think you're getting my point. My point is that it's greedy. It's not a desire to be wealthy. It's greed. There's a difference between wanting to earn money and be wealthy and being greedy. And you can be greedy when it comes to looks, where it ceases to actually, it's now in your mind. It's not in your body anymore. It's not in your heart or your body. That is the main area. You want all three, don't get me wrong, synced up, but the main area where your relationship exists in is in the heart and the body sexually with a woman. Because if you feel connected to her sexually, you feel connected to her emotionally, right? And her body physically, you feel something for her physically. When she comes in the room, you feel the energy from her. That is the essence of attraction. Now, you knowing that she's attractive objectively, that other people find her attractive, at least most other people. Some don't, maybe, but most other people do. People certainly don't think she's unattractive, right? That's good. But when you start to get into the greed portion, everything becomes much more of a spectacle. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get gorgeous girls, that you can't make that your standard, that you want to have gorgeous girls. You're totally welcome to do that. And some guys are really great at doing that, and they build that on a great foundation. But I do think that we need to look at this greed aspect, especially when it comes to, comes down to what is the purpose? What are you trying to actually accomplish here? Are you trying to get the hottest girl that's out there, or are you trying to get the girl that you are most into? And those are not necessarily the same question. A lot of guys will tell themselves, if I get the hottest girl, she's the girl I'm going to be the most into. And it isn't true. It's just not true. And the only people who are going to tell you that there's something wrong with that are people who don't ever make any decision to commit to a woman. They think that they have a higher level of value because they never make a decision, right? They never commit to anything. Therefore, they can never be shown to have made a bad decision, but they never go anywhere. They never build anything. And whether that's love or family, they don't get either of them. So consider these things. It's really, really important when you are out and dating and when you are vetting women. Do not compromise on attraction. I'll make this other point, physical attraction. Don't compromise on it, because I want to make this point about the bang zone, right? We were talking about how in my thing, 7's the threshold. Some people say 8. Again, this is subjective. It doesn't matter, because what they think of as 8 could be what I think of as 7, right? I don't really think about 10. So it's really like a 1 to 9 scale for me. So in that case, it's 7. I don't know, whatever. I don't want to split hairs here. But the point is, if you got a, like, the difficult zone for guys is the 6. Because the 6 is not a woman who you are embarrassed to have been seen. But she is not a woman whose looks delight you. I like that word, delight. Doesn't mean you're not physically attracted to her. There's not parts of her that you're physically attracted to, but you don't delight in her. There's something about her that you just don't delight in. Could be part of her, how she looks, part of her face, could be part of her figure. You just don't delight in it. And so you're not per se embarrassed to be seen with her, but you're also not, you know, I don't want you to be valuing other people's opinions so much, but I'll just make that point that because you don't delight in her, you don't want to show her off to other people, right? You don't want to show other people what you have because you're not proud of the accomplishment. The 6 is the big trap. It's a trap for women too, because that's the bang zone, right? Women who are in the bang zone are typically 6. Sometimes, I mean, for guys who want more, maybe they could be a 7, right? But for those guys, maybe it's beneath the threshold. Obviously, your threshold can scale a little bit if you have a lot more exposure to beautiful women. But again, but then it becomes subjective at the end of the day, all over again. What is it, you know? So the 6 is the trap, because in the 6, you'll tell yourself, well, I should want her. And I want to make this distinction. This is what I want to close with, because this is an important thing that guys have a hard time distinguishing. If you want a woman, you're all about her. And then as things are getting more serious, months go by, you start to be like, well, I don't know if she's attractive enough. That is not you worried about how she looks. That is you trying to find a reason to not move forward. You are grasping for rationalization, so you're going to find some imperfect feature. You're going to compare her with that imperfect feature that you've now emphasized and you didn't before. You're going to compare that to some other random girl and that you saw, and you're going to say, see, that girl's hotter. I could have had that girl or girl like her. See, there are hotter girls out there. That means I'm settling. That means I shouldn't be with the girl I'm with. It's all fucking Looney Tunes stuff. That's how people's minds work, though. But you know that it's Looney Tunes stuff because you didn't feel that way at the beginning. You were very enthusiastic about getting her. You saw her. You wanted her. It's only later that you've decided with your fear to start to change your filter. Now, contrastingly, if you start seeing a girl and you're like, from the very beginning, you're just not, you're like, you know, but well, she's attractive. I'll hook up with her. I'll see her. I don't mind hanging out with her. And then she starts doing all this kind of stuff, like girlfriend stuff, and starts to really like put it on for you. Now you're getting kind of manipulated down into committing to her when you were not really into her from the beginning. But the way that you calibrate this is you check your initial response. You check your initial reaction to her. If you were never like super excited about her from the beginning, then you're probably settling. You're getting guilt tripped into committing to her. It's a combination of guilt trip and also enticement. You know, you start to the nice guy starts to have this rationalization. It's like, well, if I don't give her what she wants, then her life's going to be ruined. Okay, yeah, not narcissistic at all to think that you sacrificing yourself is the secret to this woman's happiness. It's totally, again, another delusional thing we tell ourselves. But if you really like a woman and you've been enjoying her and her imperfections never even occur to you, and then it comes time to get serious and all of a sudden you're finding them all over the place and you're comparing her, you're probably just fucked up. Probably got to deal with that fear of missing out, that fear of losing your freedom. You got to deal with those illusions. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's show. See you tomorrow, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We will speak then, my friends. Take care.